Do you remember the first song you wrote?
I don't remember what it sounded like or the lyrics. I do remember that it was the same chords as the only song I knew how to play, which was Bob Dylan, You Ain't Going Nowhere. So I remember that.
Okay, so I imagine this was on the guitar?
Yeah, and I don't play the guitar very much anymore, but I played like 3 chords on the guitar. I was 12 years old.
Okay. Well, you started with the piano. So
Yes.
how did it come about? Why did you start with the piano?
I started playing, your basic piano education, which is, started very young, learning little songs by ear, and then finally into classical music, which was not my thing. I mean, I can appreciate it, but I'm not a classical pianist by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay. So how did you develop this into, well, songwriting, basically? Because then you pick up the guitar to write a song?
Yeah. I couldn't tell you. I always listened to the Beatles. Artists like Michael Jackson and the Beatles and the Beach Boys growing up, and I really related to that, even at a young age, just the feelings that those songs would bring about. And I guess I found myself wanting to create something like that.
Right. Well, for someone our age, it's quite uncommon to start with the Beatles.
Yeah, that's probably my father's influence.
Do you come from a rich musical background?
My mother's parents are both singers. They're opera singers and involved in music. And yeah, I mean, I think my family loves music, always has. It's been a part of my life since I was very young.
Did you go see your grandparents sing when you were younger?
I don't know that I ever did. I don't know that I was ever in, because we didn't live in the same town. So I don't know either if they weren't performing anymore, or I've certainly heard them sing, and they sing beautifully. So.
Is that maybe why you wanted to be a singer as well, or is it more like you said?
Yeah,
the
probably
Beatles?
It probably had a part of it, sure.
Well, you mentioned the Beatles through your father. Were there maybe 1 or 2 records that your father had that, in particular, that had a special meaning?
Sure. Rubber Soul by the Beatles is one of my favorite. And also Paul Simon, Graceland is another record that I grew up listening to. Just some of the most beautiful songwriting, ever.
And why these 2?
Those are the 2 that stick out. To me, I just remember hearing around the house. And then, I think Rubber Soul, I wouldn't say Rubber Soul is the most influential Beatles record, but I just like all the songs, how it fits together as one record, and I just think it's really beautiful writing.
Okay. Well, you also went to, I wrote it down, Sunny Purchase College, but not for piano, but to play jazz saxophone.
Right, yeah.
So another transition. Why this transition?
I got into, I must have been about 14 years old when I started getting really into jazz music. And I had, you're required to play an instrument growing up, and piano doesn't count, and guitar doesn't count. So I had to choose.
Why not? Why?
It's just not part of the curriculum. Oh. So you have to choose either, trumpet or flute or violin or cello. And I actually chose clarinet. And that transitions really easily into saxophone. And I don't remember what it was. I think what it was that introduced me to jazz, but I started really enjoying playing saxophone and trying to improvise the way, improvise solos on saxophone. And that was, this really great creative outlet. And ended up continuing that all through my education, and then deciding that was what I wanted to study at university.
Okay. Well, are there any other instruments you play, or?
No, it's pretty much, mostly it's pretty much saxophone and piano right now. I can play some woodwinds, not very well. I can play a little bit of guitar, not very well. But those are the 2 main instruments.
Well, the record pieces is predominantly piano. So is that because it's easier to write songs on the piano than it is on the saxophone? Or?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's also, I can accompany myself. You know, saxophone was, I mostly just play in jazz. And then songwriting, I played the piano. Those two worlds don't cross that often in my life.
Well, you have quite an eclectic taste in music, I've read. So how did this, all these different sounds come into your own?
I think, you know, you keep an open mind and you just welcome all new forms of music. You know, I maybe started with the Beatles and then got really into jazz and into, you know, Charlie Parker and John Coltrane and Miles Davis. And then in high school got into like artists like John Mayer and Jamie Cullum and sort of the singer-songwriter scene. And then, you know, after getting deeper into jazz into university, but also finding artists like Ryan Adams, Ray LaMontagne, sort of this alternative country. And, you know, still listening to Paul Simon and Bob Dylan, and just, you know, just everything good. Not that there's bad music necessarily, but just everything that really connects with me, and those happen to be some of the few.